a church van, a nursing student walking along I-95 at 1 a.m., and a screwdriver used 36 times. Lucious Boyd has been sitting on Florida's death row since 2002 for what happened on December 5, 1998. But investigators suspect that was just one night in a much longer pattern that may have started years earlier and involved bodies dumped in sawgrass, hidden in canals, or possibly cremated at a funeral home. It only gets worse.
A woman was raped and murdered back in 1998 in Broward County.
The victim, known as Jane Doe, was identified earlier this year. Now detectives have arrested her alleged killer.
Dawnia Dacosta left work at 10 on the evening of December 4th, 1998. She was 21 years old, studying to become a pediatric nurse practitioner, singing in the church choir, keeping a picture of the perfect wedding dress tucked away somewhere because she believed her life would unfold that way. College, career, marriage. The normal trajectory young women plan for when they're 21 and everything still feels possible. Instead of going straight home that night, she drove to church where she prayed until 1 in the morning. On her way home to Deerfield Beach, driving north on I-95, her car ran out of gas. So she walked to a nearby Texaco station. A witness around there spotted her and remembered she looked scared, though whether that fear came from being stranded at night on a highway or from something she'd already sensed, it's impossible to know. What happened next was captured by another witness who saw her getting into a van with Lucious Boyd at the wheel. The van was a church van, the kind with ministry logos painted on the sides, the kind that's supposed to represent safety and community support. Boyd offered Dawnia a ride, told her he'd help her get back to her car or get gas or whatever she needed. And she got in. 3 days later, on December 7th, her body was found wrapped in sheets and a plastic curtain, dumped in an alley behind a warehouse near Oakland Park Boulevard. The medical examiner counted 36 stab wounds to her chest, 4 wounds to the right side of her head, 12 separate wounds to her right hand that looked like defensive injuries from when she tried to stop the screwdriver from coming down. There were contusions and abrasions on her forearm, and bruising to her vagina consistent with sexual assault. The screwdriver had been a Torx driver, a specific kind of tool with a star-shaped head, and Boyd had used it over and over, stabbing her while she was still alive, sexually assaulting her while she was still conscious, taunting her according to what detectives would later piece together from the evidence and the timeline. Sergeant Glenn Bucata, the lead detective on the case, would later describe it as one of the worst, most sadistic murders he'd worked during his entire career with the Broward Sheriff's Office. The wording suggested something drawn out, something that took time, something that Dawnia experienced fully before it ended. Boyd drove around with her body in the church van for days. He wrapped her in sheets that came from his apartment. He added a plastic shower curtain. He bound her with materials that forensic technicians would later match to items found in Boyd's home. Then he dumped her behind the warehouse like she was trash, leaving her there for someone else to find while he went back to his life in Fort Lauderdale. The investigation moved slowly at first because nobody connected the church van to Boyd immediately. Dawnia's family buried her and tried to process the randomness of a young woman dying because her car ran out of gas and she accepted help from the wrong person. Bucata kept working the case, following leads that went nowhere, waiting for forensic results that took months to process. However, on March 25, 1999, a DNA sample came back from the crime lab matching semen found on Dawnia's body to Lucious Boyd. The next day, police arrested him in the parking lot of the James C. Boyd Funeral Home, his family's business on Sistrunk Boulevard, where Boyd had worked on and off for years. During his interviews about the murder, Boyd claimed he was suffering from memory lapses, said he couldn't remember what happened, couldn't explain why his DNA was all over a dead woman's body. One detective called him a cold-blooded killer without a conscience and told him he was going to jail for assaulting and killing Dawnia. Boyd reportedly responded by asking what took them so long to catch him, demanded an attorney, and then stopped talking. After his arrest, detectives searched his apartment and also found blood that matched the woman's. They also found that 2 sheets used to wrap her body had disappeared from his apartment around the time of the murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The kind of case where DNA and forensics lined up so perfectly that arguing innocence became impossible. Before being sent to jail, Boyd had accused the Broward County Sheriff's Office of working for the KKK, claiming he was being set up in an attempt to discredit his family, which had run the funeral home for decades and had a certain standing in Fort Lauderdale's black community. His father, James Calvin Boyd Sr., had owned the funeral home until his death in 1996, while his mother, Corrine Howard, worked there until her death in 2008. While the funeral home represented stability, respectability, a family business that served the community, Lucious Boyd represented something else entirely. He was born on March 22, 1959, in Broward County, Florida, right in the middle of a huge family of 10 siblings. Growing up with that many brothers and sisters meant a loud house, crowded rooms, and a constant struggle for space and attention. As an adult, his life never really settled into anything steady. He married twice and fathered at least 8 children, but even with such a large family of his own, he drifted in and out of stability. Through the 1990s, he bounced between low-paying jobs, long periods of unemployment, and times when he couldn't afford rent. Whenever things got too hard, he ended up back at his family's home in Plantation, trying to get back on his feet. His relatives later said he had been battling a cocaine problem for years, a habit that kept dragging him down and making every financial or personal problem worse. His relationships weren't peaceful either. In 1990, during a fight with his second wife, Julie McCormick, things turned violent after she told him she planned to leave him because of his cheating. He choked her until she blacked out. Police charged him with aggravated battery, a serious felony, but the case was watered down in court to a misdemeanor, and instead of jail time or mandatory treatment, he walked away with probation. No real punishment, no jail time, and no forceful reason to change the path he was already on. In 1992, he was then accused of sexually assaulting a girl on her 18th birthday during a date. No charges were filed because the victim declined to prosecute, which happens often in these kinds of cases when victims decide they can't face the ordeal of testifying, can't handle seeing their attacker in court, can't deal with defense attorneys questioning every detail of what happened. Then in 1993, Boyd stabbed Roderick Bullard to death on a Fort Lauderdale street with a kitchen knife during an argument over an automobile. When he claimed self-defense, the jury found him not guilty. In 1997, Boyd was accused of sexual assault again, but he was acquitted. The pattern was pretty clear, because he kept getting arrested, kept getting accused of violence against women, and kept walking away without serious consequences because the charges get reduced or dropped or juries don't convict. So by the time he killed Dawnia in 1998, he already had a criminal history that included sexual assault, kidnapping, murder, and assault charges. But he'd never spent significant time in jail for any of it. He was 40 years old and had been skating through the system for nearly a decade, learning that he could hurt people without facing real punishment. 6 months before Dawnia's murder, in June 1998, Boyd's 19-year-old girlfriend, Patrice Alston, was last seen getting into his green Mazda. The two were supposedly going on a trip to Winter Haven, nearly 200 miles away in central Florida. However, Boyd had returned the next day without Patrice. Why? No one knew exactly because he told different stories to different people that he'd dropped her near her grandmother's house, or at a grocery store, or she'd gone off with friends. Witnesses who he claimed could verify Patrice had returned from the trip later also denied having seen her. She was never found. Investigators were convinced Boyd knew exactly where her body was located, but without physical evidence or a body, they couldn't charge him. The thing about Boyd was that his behavior suggested someone who understood exactly how the criminal system worked, who knew what prosecutors needed to make charges stick, who'd learned through experience that witnesses could be intimidated, victims could decline to prosecute, and juries sometimes didn't convict, even when the evidence seemed obvious. He'd been arrested multiple times, gone to trial multiple times, and walked away free every time until Dawnia.
There are cases where he has been linked previously, circumstantially, or through other physical evidence, but those cases didn't quite meet the threshold for charging. Now that we've kind of unearthed a little bit more as far as evidence, we're going to be revisiting those cases. I don't want to say too much because they're not all going to be VSO cases.
Okay.
But I do believe that he was more active than just these two cases that we know of, that there's going to be more.
The difference with Dawnia was the DNA. He had been required to give a DNA sample while awaiting trial for the 1997 sexual assault charge he was eventually acquitted of, and that sample sat in a database, waiting. However, when forensic technicians processed evidence from Dawnia's murder scene and ran it through the system, his DNA came up as a match. This time, there was no way to explain it away. No story that made sense except the obvious one. The man had sexually assaulted and murdered Dawnia, and his DNA proved it. The trial for Dawnia's murder happened in 2002. Boyd had repeatedly said that he didn't want to present mitigating evidence, didn't want his lawyers putting on testimony about his childhood or his drug addiction or anything else that might explain why he did what he did. However, he eventually agreed to let a pastor who engaged in jail ministry testify. Boyd had also made a rambling statement to the jury saying he was sympathetic to the victim's family, that he was innocent, that he had no hatred against his accusers, and that he'd been falsely accused in the past. However, the jury still unanimously recommended the death penalty. So on June 21, 2002, he was sentenced to death and sent to Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida.
In the course of doing that processing, we were able to link Lucious Boyd to her murder.
Dawnia's murder was just what prosecutors could prove, and the suspected body count was way much higher. On August 13, 1997, the naked body of 24-year-old Melissa Floyd was found in high grass near a guardrail on I-95 in Palm Beach County. She'd been stabbed multiple times, so it took 4 months to identify her. She was also known to use drugs near the Boyd family funeral home, so it was no surprise her ID card was discovered on the funeral home grounds a few weeks after her body was found. But there was no physical evidence linking Boyd to the crime. On February 16, 1998, 20-year-old Gina Marie Moore was found deceased near a canal along Beeline Highway in Palm Beach County. She was nude and had possibly been asphyxiated. Detectives working the case looked at Boyd as a possible suspect, but couldn't make a connection that would hold up in court. Then there was Eileen Trupner. On December 18, 1998, just 2 weeks after Dawnia's murder, Boyd had again sexually assaulted, strangled Eileen, and then dragged her body into the sawgrass in a remote area off U.S. Route 27, north of I-75. It was a boater that found her body the next day lying face down. Her identity remained unknown for 25 years and was listed as a Jane Doe, buried without a name, mourned by a sister who had no idea what happened to her until 2023, when forensic genetic genealogy finally identified her. In December 2023, DNA testing of evidence left by the killer matched Boyd. She was no longer faceless or nameless. Boyd was indicted for her murder while sitting on death row awaiting execution for Dawnia's murder. Eileen had been 41 years old, a mother of 2 children, a Puerto Rico native who'd moved to South Florida in the mid-1990s to learn English. According to her sister Nancy, Eileen struggled with mental health issues after the birth of her children, but still was very kind with a good heart, never criticized anybody, never hurt anybody, and that she did not deserve to die the way she died. Detectives believe Boyd targeted her because of her mental illness, saw her vulnerability as an opportunity the same way he saw Dawnia stranded at night as an opportunity. Authorities also suspect Boyd in the disappearance of 25-year-old Danielle Zacot from Fort Lauderdale in 1999, and in multiple other unsolved murders and sexual assaults from the 1990s. Detectives throughout Florida are now looking at Boyd as a possible suspect in cases from that decade, because he was known to travel the state. Captain John Brown from the Broward Sheriff's Office said detectives strongly suspect the man was a serial killer rather than someone who killed once or twice. The most disturbing theory investigators pursued involved the family funeral home on Sistrunk Boulevard. Detectives working that case investigated the possibility that he was disposing of the victims' bodies at his family's funeral home in Fort Lauderdale, using the crematorium to destroy evidence, mixing the bodies with legitimate cremations so nobody would notice extra remains, but they never found enough supporting evidence to prove it, though they did find Melissa Floyd's ID card on the funeral home property. The theory made sense in a horrible way because he had access to such kind of place where someone could make a body disappear completely without raising suspicion. However, proving it required finding remains or witnesses or documentation that never materialized. Sergeant Bukata, the detective who worked Dawnia's case, told reporters he believed Boyd was up there with Ted Bundy in terms of sickness. Someone who wasn't just a killer, but someone who enjoyed it. Someone who sought out vulnerable women. Someone who kept doing it because he liked it. That comment reflected what many investigators thought because they felt that he had killed far more people than anyone could prove, and that the confirmed victims were just the ones where evidence survived. The man is now 65 years old, sitting on death row at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. He's been there since 2002, awaiting execution while appeals move through the courts slowly, with multiple rounds of arguments and decisions that take years to resolve. In 2021, the Florida Supreme Court denied his motion for a rehearing, which was just another in a long series of rejections stretching back decades. Florida has executed 99 people since reinstating the death penalty in 1976, but the pace has slowed in recent years as legal challenges and concerns about execution methods have created delays. He has outlived other inmates who arrived on death row around the same time he did, watched men get executed while he continues filing appeals, continues claiming he was framed. Still, the indictment for Eileen's murder in 2023 added another layer to Boyd's case, because it raised questions about whether prosecutors would pursue a trial for that killing or whether it mattered at that point. Boyd already has a death sentence, and adding another murder conviction still doesn't change his sentence, though it does provide closure for Eileen's family and officially connects Boyd to another killing investigators always suspected he committed. Dawnia's mother, Daphne Bowe, felt relief when Boyd was arrested in 1999. She told reporters a ton of weight came off her body, that she'd prayed for answers and God had provided them at the right time. Bowe knew the Boyd family, knew the funeral home, knew who Lucious Boyd was because everybody in Fort Lauderdale knew the Boyd funeral home. The idea that the son of the funeral home director was the one who killed her daughter was almost incomprehensible. Like finding out someone from church or someone from the neighborhood or someone you trusted had been hiding something monstrous the entire time. Patrice Alston is still missing. Her body has never been found. Her family believes Boyd lied to police about what happened during that trip to Winter Haven in June 1998. Believes he killed her and disposed of her body somewhere between Fort Lauderdale and Central Florida. They hope someday someone will find evidence that connects Boyd definitively to her disappearance, that she'll stop being a missing person and become a confirmed victim so her family can bury her properly. The other suspected victims, Melissa Floyd, Gina Marie Moore, Danielle Zakat, and whoever else Boyd may have killed during the 1990s, remain cold cases without enough evidence to charge him. Serial killers often take secrets to the grave, refusing to confess or provide information about victims authorities don't know about. And Boyd has maintained his innocence since his arrest, never confessed to anything, never provided closure for families beyond what DNA evidence forced him to account for. He sits on Florida's death row waiting for an execution that may happen in the next few years, or may take another decade depending on the speed appeals proceed. He's been there since 2002, longer than Dawnia lived, longer than Eileen went unidentified, long enough that some people have forgotten his case, while detectives continue investigating whether he's responsible for murders that remain unsolved. The church van is gone. The funeral home still operates under the Boyd family name, run by relatives who had nothing to do with what Lucious did. And somewhere in Florida, There may be families who don't know yet that the man sitting on death row is the reason their daughter or sister or mother never came home. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps Last Cell Chronicles keep telling real death row stories, because every cell has a story.